Here's a good example of a consensus not taking hold. Locusts used to blanket the Midwest, Nebraska, Ohio, just as surely as they do today in the third world. And it was a little piece of modern technology in the mid-1800s that finally wiped out the locusts. And does anyone know what that might have been? Mid-1800s? Couldn't have been pesticides, right? What? The plow. Yep, it was the plow. Which was not new technology, but the idea that a civilization less than 100 years old, called the United States of America, could push across an entire continent, farming each step of the way, and reach the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, and start plowing up the foothills to plant crops. And that robbed the locusts of their breeding ground. And there haven't been locusts here, really, ever since. So we can talk about, aid to the third world, and maybe sending them some pesticides to help with their locust problem. I don't know, or send some powdered milk or some rice or something. Or we could just teach them to farm, right? And they'll solve their locust problem, just like we did. Now, this might sound a little crazy at first, but just imagine if the environmentalists had been organized in the mid-1800s. Imagine what they might have done to forestall this desecration of the foothills of the United States. As I say, at first this might sound a little far-fetched, right? They would never do that. Well, of course they wouldn't stand up for the locust. What would they have stood up for? And what are they standing up for right now? They would have stood up for the preservation of the natural, pristine habitat of the foothills of Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, and Montana, and wherever else the locusts used to breed. You see, they don't come out and say what they really want to do. I mean, they don't even really want to save the locusts. They just want to set us back. And they'll do it in the name of something that on the surface sounds good even to everyone in this room. Well, sure, we have to preserve that landscape. And that's what they're doing right now with hydroelectricity. I'm old enough to remember when the environmentalists thought hydroelectric dams were great, clean power. Not anymore. They want every dam on the Colorado River blown up. Why? To save a 5 or 10 square mile estuary, 300 miles downriver, because there's some nuke living in the mud. I kid you not. The plague, dengue, fever, polio, and last but certainly not least, malaria, which still kills millions of children under the age of 5 every year, thanks to the environmentalist ban of DDT that I just mentioned, which I stress again was not what Rachel Carson actually said in her book, Silent Spring, but she has to bear the brunt still, because it was her book that gave rise to that. These are all natural organisms that we have thankfully wiped out in the civilized parts of the world. How many people know that until the 1920s and 30s, malaria existed in all southern states? Malaria! I mean, that's like in a Raiders of the Lost Ark movie. I mean, that's like a script thing. It's not even reality to us anymore. Malaria? Yeah. And they wiped it out with civilization. They didn't even have DDT yet. They used other things. Now that brings us to golden rice. Speaking of the third world, everyone here has heard of golden rice? No? You see, in some parts of the world, they just eat a heavy rice diet, and rice has no vitamin A in it. So this leads to blindness. Now the statistics on this, if you'll allow me, are devastating. We're talking about, I got this from Dr. Patrick Moore, who's one of the founders of Greenpeace, who has since come to his senses. He's now called the Sensible Environmentalist. We're looking at 500,000 kids a year going blind right now. That's not the worst of it. After you go blind, you can flip a coin because you got a 50-50 chance of whether you're going to live or not. So, a Swiss scientist came up with golden rice that has vitamin A in it, and it's called golden because it has an orange hue to it. Right? But it's genetically engineered, so that's not going to happen. You're not going to see golden rice in the third world. I mean, it would even be good for us. But golden rice has been stuck in the regulatory process. You know, we think of the battles for Roundup Ready products in the late 1990s, 2000, 2001. golden rice that one's been on the back burner, stuck on the drawing board, if you will, for longer than that. They won't allow it. And what the environmentalists do is they work through World Health Organization, and they'll talk to any dictator who will, have them, and they'll explain why you shouldn't allow golden rice. And there it is, along with banning DDT, which leads to, and in that case, we're talking more like 5 million deaths a year from perfectly preventable disease. And you'll see movie stars advertising, buy a mosquito net for a kid in the third world, right? No, bring back DDT.